Welcome to An Epiphany with Tiffany. My name is Tiffany, and I've just had an epiphany. This podcast is all about Christian singles looking for community. Christian dating can be quite a mess these days. I'll share stories from my guests and practical tips for successful love. Dating shouldn't be this hard, right? So grab your favorite snack or drink and curl up with this episode, and you might just have an epiphany of your own. Okay, so the question I wanted to start with was, what are expectations for you as far as a man leading in a relationship? Like, what do those look like for you?
So for me, it kind of looks like being consistent and following through, right? So if you're going to lead and say, hey, we're going to go this place, or I'm going to do this, I expect you to follow through with that, because that kind of shows consistency and gives me a way to follow. Because if you're not consistent, I'm not sure where I'm following you to. So I definitely need you to be consistent and really clear about your intentions, and then the follow through, right? Because it's nice. Words are great. Words are absolutely wonderful. However, if there is no follow through to these wonderful words, then it's just wonderful words. So leading is like being consistent and then following through with what you say you're going to do.
I would have to agree with that. I feel like nowadays in the dating game, there is no follow through whatsoever, and it's very frustrating. Being on the woman's side and like having this knowledge and I guess expectation of leadership and what that looks like, and then it not being matched as far as what's coming back. You know what I mean?
Right. Because it's like, okay, and then like, okay, but you're not being consistent, so if you're not being consistent, even as we're getting to know each other, I don't have any expectations of you being consistent in a real relationship, because you have shown that that's not your pattern or practice.
Yeah.
So we need to see that.
Yeah, agreed. And then I think it's funny though, because some people I've heard lately say, well, they can fool you, into believing that that's what they're going to do. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but it takes about 3 months for somebody's true colors to come out. So sometimes it's quicker than that, but if you stick it out to the 3-month mark, at that point, unless they're just really, really, really good at playing the game, but statistically speaking, it takes about 3 months to figure somebody out truly who they are. So, like if those actions and the integrity, communication, whatever, intentionality, follow through, right, continues on for past that 3-month mark, then you're more than likely getting the true expectations like figured out, what a relationship would actually look like with this person.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because it takes considerable effort to fool someone like that on a regular basis. And I think even in then you can look back and be like, but there were signs and I just chose to ignore them. Like I chose to look back when I called him and he didn't answer, or we were supposed to meet and he canceled at the last minute. Oh yeah, he did it like 3 or 4 times. Then it's not like a one-off, something happened. It's like, oh, this is a consistent pattern. I just blew it off because of, this or something else. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. So I want to ask you this question because you're a little older than everybody else that I've interviewed so far. So the question is like, how does community play a part in like your current dating field? Because go ahead.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, because I would assume that more people in your age range are married and like, that not a lot of people in my age range are married too. So it's just kind of like that, I guess, what does that look like in your age range?
Different, like really, really different. So I have a significant number of single friends, but that's not unusual in the Black community.
Mm,
And I have a significant number of married friends. So I have like a significant number of both, which is really strange. So that's really, so I get both sides of it. So that's, for me, that's what it looks like. And so then I have people on all sides, like looking for someone for me to date. So that, that's like, do you like him? Do you like this person? I was talking to one of my friends' husband. We were at something doing Bible study. He was like, "Where's all the men?" We're like, "You have to play matchmaker." He was like, and his wife was like, "Yes." So it kind of looks like having a lot of married friends, which is a beautiful thing, because you get to see that marriage is not just what you think it is,
mm,
right? Marriage is a lot of compromise and finding your person that can go on the roller coaster with you and not be in the roller coaster.
mm-hmm.
And then having single friends where like, the dating world is so interesting at this age. Oh my gosh. Did you see this? All that going through the whole thing. Like, I'm not sure what's in the dating pool, but we're definitely not sure it's God. So we got to figure that out.
Yeah. I it's that difficult too. Like in the 30s age range too. It's like, uh, I mean, I have the same as you. I have a significant amount of married friends that have been married since we were all like 22. And then I have a bunch of currently single female friends. I have a few guy friends that are single, but mostly female friends. And it's nice to have a community, to have people who can understand like the boat you're in, you know, because a lot of my married friends, like they don't get it. They're like, huh? That's what you're having to deal with, you know?
Yeah, I had married friends like one is like, don't get married. I'm like, says the person who's been married for 25 years. Are you kidding me?
Uh,
That's easy for you to say, but it's different. She's always like, you just go do so many things by yourself. I'm like, because I have to. Like, I can't wait for someone
mm-hmm,
to go and do something, or I wouldn't live. You'd always be in that perpetual state of waiting and waiting and waiting. And that's not what we're supposed to do. We're
mm-hmm.
supposed to still live a full and complete life, when you're married and when you're not married. Like, nobody's just sitting on the couch all day. Like,
Yes.
what are you saying? Like, no, that's not going to work. Get out and live.
Exactly. I had to remind myself of that earlier this year because I was kind of getting stuck in that pattern of like, okay, I don't want to do this because I want to wait to do it with somebody, and then I'm like, why are you doing this, Tiffany? You need to have a life and go out and meet people. Um, because I'm so single, like it's just so single, but at the same time, I never know, or I'm never gonna know if that person might be out there doing those other things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you have to go. Like, I went to the beach by myself for my birthday. You did? Yeah. Because, yeah, it's my birthday and I get to do what I want. It's a national holiday. And you just can't wait. You know what I mean? Like I said, you have to live and explore life.
Mhm.
Like you said, you don't know if that your person is going to be out there. So you can't stay, inside and, hang out in church all day. You got to go do some other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I keep hearing that a lot lately too. People are like, "Oh, well, just go to a different church," and I'm all, "That's not okay." Yes, I understand that worked. It may or may have worked back in the day, but that's still not always the best course of action because statistically speaking, right now, there are way more single women in church than there are men. And
Right.
so if we go into that, like going to a different church with the mindset of I'm going to find somebody instead of I'm just going to, appear here and have some community, like there's still going to be a disappointment, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you can't go around church hopping looking for a man. Like, what does that look like? I mean, is the church the club now? Is that what we're supposed to be doing? We're just going church hop, go here. No, he's not there. I'm going here. No, he's not there. What was the word? I don't know. I was looking at the cute guy. Oh, but he's married. Like, what in the world? That's ridiculous.
Agreed. Agreed. But it's so funny because I hear it from people that are my parents' generation. They're 60s and up, right? And I am my grandparents' generation too. They're like, oh, just go try another church. Oh, just go try another church, because that's how they found their, husbands and wives. And all. It was different back then. It was way different back then. Churches had community set up for singles then. They don't now.
They do not.
They do not. And, it's like, that's a huge problem, but that's a rant for another day.
I feel that's another topic.
That's a whole another topic. We may come back to it. We'll see. But it's so frustrating when, the things that other people did and they're trying to give you advice because they love and care about you, don't work for you because that's just not the scenario anymore.
It's not like a couple of years ago. I don't know, maybe it was during COVID when we couldn't go outside or something. I was talking to my pastor. We just had a really good conversation. She's like, I don't know. Cause she's married 22 years. It's like, I'm not sure if I could be single at my age. Mm-hmm. Like, she's like, I don't know what that would look like. Mm-hmm. And not putting it down, but we were just having real dialogue about the difference, particularly as you age, what it really looks like. Mm-hmm. And then, navigating that next portion of your life. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it doesn't work like it used to anymore unless you go to a mega church. Mm. But then it's a mega church, so that has its own other stuff that goes along with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's like there's a lot of frustration there, I feel like, as far as the way it could be. I guess the possibilities, like if more churches were, I guess we're going to segue back into that, more churches were involved with the singles community and, had that opportunity to minister to us and provide a place for us to have that community. It's just lacking in so many ways.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, this is a huge mega church. It doesn't happen. And most churches aren't mega churches. Most churches have like 50 or fewer members. So that's just reality. So it doesn't happen organically. It had to be like a concerted effort from a bunch of different churches. And that would be really interesting. Just because of the dynamic of this pastor, that pastor, we believe this, you believe that, It would take a lot to put all of those non-Christian character traits aside and be like, oh, this is what the community needs. I will put my personal women don't speak in tongues and all that other stuff. I'll put all that stuff beside because I see there's a need in the community and I'm going to work to meet that need. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so you bring up a really good point. Secondary issues versus like salvation issues, and how we as the church get real crazy about some of those things. And I'm like, why? I don't get it. I don't understand.
I don't like, do you know Jesus? Okay.
Yep.
You have a relationship with him? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and I feel like some of those things like they become such bigger issues because we in our finite brains can't understand how some of those things work. Especially when it comes like the spiritual gifts and, speaking in tongues and even discernment, like, let's be honest, like that one can be a whole ball game of things, depending on how the discernment is given to the individual. You know what I mean? And so it's thoughts. I'm trying to pull them together. I think the struggle comes in when people like myself who don't have the gift of tongues, right, can look at it and go, huh? You know what I mean? And it just be like, this is confusing to me because I don't understand it. But then I have to remind myself, okay, Tiffany, but God didn't gift you that way. And if I've read Revelation at all, I know that certain gifts and things are going to be signs of the times, right? So those gifts that a lot of people, especially tongues, tongues is just like the big
Mhm.
one. But there was a time where that gift wasn't prevalent because it wasn't
Right.
needed, right? And now, like, because I wholeheartedly believe we're going into the end times. So, like now, of course, it's going to become more of a prevalent spiritual gifting again because it is needed.
Mhm. Mhm.
And and I think that we get caught up on this whole ebb and flow of how God works because we're like, oh,
Right.
it stopped. The Bible is very clear about how tongues aren't going to be a gift anymore, blah, blah, blah. But then I'm like, yeah, but you're leaving out this whole little section over here.
Right. You're leaving out the whole other aspect. You're focusing on one thing
Mm-hmm.
and not looking at the entirety. Because, like you said, it ebbs and flows where it was kind of asleep for whatever reason. And then God wakes it up. It's like, this is what's needed
Mm-hmm.
for this time, for this hour, for his people to really walk in the authority and walk in who he said we were, who he said we are. It's one of the things that's needed, as if all of the gifts are needed.
Mm.
And we need to have grace for people who may or may not feel that same way.
Amen.
Okay. I'm not arguing with about that. Okay.
Yep. Okay. Well, that's fine. Like, and I think that too, I've talked about this with some of the other ladies already, but it just came back to mind. So, um, the idea that personal convictions are different person to
Yes.
person.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it doesn't matter what what your convictions are compared to mine. Like those are God-given things. And if I know, hey, you have a conviction connected to drinking, right? We'll just throw that one out there.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. I just won't drink around you especially if you ask me like, hey, can you not drink around me? Okay,
Right.
cool, cool. That's fine. But if you don't have that conviction, then okay, cool, cool. Or because on the other side, I don't necessarily have that conviction about drinking. I don't get crazy, but I can have a drink.
Right.
And so, but that conversation, like it can happen, and I can sit there and be like, okay, I understand that's a conviction for you, and I don't want you to stumble in this area, so I won't drink around you. That's fine. No
Right.
big deal.
Right. And people, particularly with drinking, people just get so up in arms. I'm like, listen, my personal conviction is what God told me to do and how he told me to live my life to the fullest for his glory.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And yours might be different, and we still serve the same God. And when we die, we're still going to see each other in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm not arguing with you. I've learned now not to argue over stuff. I'm like, because when you argue, you're not going to change someone's mind. And like, life is too short and valuable for me to argue over you with this. Like, okay, and I'm just going to keep it moving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. So the other thing is it comes down to, for me, for if it's a sin issue. Like if I'm going to bring it up to somebody, it's going to be like a sin
Mm-hmm.
issue. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, you're drinking way too much and you're driving, you're being a danger to
Right.
yourself and to others. Like I'm
Yeah.
going to say something to you. You know what I mean? But
Yeah. 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 Because it's like if you can't go to sleep without taking a drink every night, we're starting to have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like then we're getting into a sin issue. Then your body is becoming addicted to it. We got to look at, maybe something deeper is going on that you don't want to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if you have a drink on your birthday, okay. Okay.
I hope it tastes good.
Everybody's like, all right, it's good. Okay, that works.
Exactly. And I think too, sometimes we get caught up in our own like sin issues. And
Mhm.
sometimes we'll project that on to somebody else. And so I've had to remember that when I have somebody coming at me with like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that because it's not biblical, blah, 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 blah. Where I'm like, again, it's a personal conviction thing. Like if God told me straight out, Tiffany, don't ever drink again. Okay. you know, all right. I won't ever have another drop of whiskey.
Right.
you know?
And through that, we're going to be okay. If God's like, you know what? It's not bringing me any glory anymore. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then we'll do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, well, I'll admit it. Like I've had times where I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't have had that much. And then it's like, okay, we're gonna taper it back and then kind of come at it again. But again, I feel like it's an ebb and flow situation too with some personal convictions because
Right.
just because it was a conviction at one point in time might not be later because there could be healing and deliverance.
All
Um,
kinds of stuff.
right? But then on the other side, um, it could become a personal conviction because, like you said, like becoming an issue, you know?
Yeah. 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 And I think, when you get into partner relationship with someone,
Mm-hmm.
then those are the kind of things you're going to have to talk about. But if we're just hanging out, if we're friends, I have friends that do like, it doesn't really like, oh, okay. But if it's a real personal conviction, you see yourself going down that pathway, those are the kind of things that you're definitely going to have to talk about because they could create conflicts because you hasn't resolved it. Not that a person has to change. It's just that you have to talk about those issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. Like I know couples who like one of them is a recovering alcoholic. The other one just likes to have a couple drinks every once in a while, So it's just kind of like how I've asked them, how do you make that work? Like when one of them clearly has an addiction issue and the other one doesn't, like what does that look like? And um they were very open about it, like that it was a struggle for them. But, the one who has no issues with drinking did stop for like a really long time, was like, I'm not going to drink and, whatever. And, whatnot. But anyway, that's just a side note story. It's just kind of like, again, a communication, talking about it. And I think you bring up another good point too with like having those conversations. I feel like those secondary issues um, wouldn't be a problem in the long run, like or shouldn't be a problem in the long run, I guess. So I want to say it for like bigger church communities being able to come together and provide something for us singles. I'm going back to that.
Yeah, no, no, no. I think you're 100% right. I think it shouldn't be, but I think pride gets in the way. I want to say,
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be the issue, and maybe not the people who want to do it. Maybe it's the people in charge. I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, should it be? You're right. I'm like, she's right. It shouldn't be an issue. 100%. What's the problem?
I know, right? It shouldn't be a problem. But then that's the other thing too, is like if like say we're gonna go down a dream path for a minute. Like if this is happening, say a bunch of churches are getting together and, developing this place of community for singles because you know, they don't have the ability to do it alone, right? So they're going to pool their resources and do it together. I feel like if you are as a single male or female, right, like are going into that situation and the possibility of meeting people from different denominations than you, that brings up the ability for you to have tough conversations,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and be able to say, like, okay, cool, I'm interested in this guy. He is from this denomination. Like, let's have a chat about what that really looks like for him. What's his core beliefs? Because again, that's the bigger the bigger issue.
A bigger issue.
you know, but yeah, I think we shy away from that. We shy away from having those hard conversations. But yeah, anyway, I just think that'd be really interesting if churches started doing that, though.
Right. And as we're dreaming, I'm like, can you imagine the change that it would make in people's lives?
Mm-hmm.
Right? The change it would do for a city, town, neighborhood, block, or whatever, because people are really coming together because there's a need in the church. And then that flows out of the church, where there could be a massive influx of people that come into the church because we put down our church walls. We were like, oh, okay, so this is a need. I know this is a need because either I'm part of the community, or if you're a pastor, you have several people in your church that are part of the community. How can we address this need where one church isn't overwhelmed, but where everybody comes together? See, now you're going to make me dream a whole lot, Tiffany. I'll be like, okay, God, so what are we doing?
Yay!
And I have one friend, she'll be like, oh, we're doing this? So I need to pause. Like, what's that look like? I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Okay. Well, that's a side note thing we'll have to discuss after because I want to be involved. Because it's something that I think is needed. And that's one of the themes that keeps coming up throughout these conversations. And so I think, again, it's something that God is really trying to bring to the forefront that, hey, you as my church are like not doing your job,
Right.
and you're not supporting each other. You're getting too caught up on all of these other issues that really honestly aren't that important. They are, but they're not as important as we're making them out to be. Like we're not reaching the people around us because we're not being the example either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very true. Because we're supposed to live out our lives for Christ. And so if we live out Ephesians, where it says we are a body fitly joined together, supplying what each part of us needs, then that will be supplying the need for individuals who are single in whatever phase you're in, whether you're like single with young kids, young adult, college, empty nester like I am, or senior like I know people are. We have to learn to supply those needs as well as the needs of, people who are married and stuff like that too.
Mm-hmm.
So we really have to supply that need.
So you just brought up another thought. I'm having an epiphany right in the middle of this. Thank you, Lord. Okay. So this is something that I've struggled with personally because I feel like it's lacking. The mentorship like aspect. And so I just had this thought pop back into my head and I'm like, okay, God, I hear you. Of the like married couples, regardless of well, maybe not like young, but like, married couples who are older, taking under their wing singles and being able to develop them and have that community and be like, hey, this is what it's like to be married. Obviously not like sharing all the nitty gritty details, but just having like a level of community in that way. Like, where are the married women taking all of the unmarried women under their wing?
Right. And having those real blunt conversations, like legit, it's not having sex every day. Stop it.
Yes.
Stop it. You know what I mean? Because there's health issues if you have young kids. I have friends who have younger kids. They're like, we have to schedule intimate time because they got 2-year-olds. Like that's real life. That's real talk. If you're watching somebody's dirty underwear and you're like, really? It's like,
Yeah.
that's real talk. Like, stop the whole princess pie in the sky. We're going to go live off forever, la la land. Like it takes real work. A good friend of mine said, the very thing that you love so much about your spouse is the thing that's going to get on your absolute last nerve when you get married.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's going to wear you out.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be prepared for that.
Mm-hmm.
And there may be days when you wake up and look over and be like, Jesus, did we make the right choice? Because right about now,
Yes.
I know it's not an option, but I don't, you know what I mean? Because and they may feel the same way about you. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, I'm not perfect. That like you may wake up and be like, this girl over here, Lord, this like Adam, this woman you gave me. I don't know what she doing. She don't come home. She got me running around till 10 o'clock at night and getting up, going to work the next day. And she ready to do it all over again. I'm like, girl, sit down. Like this girl, she don't know how to turn herself off. What are we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's just kind of how it is reality. And then for women, it's like the reality of submission isn't what we think it is.
Mm.
And that it's actually freedom. And that it's okay because you get to be you. Like when you marry the person that God has for you, they don't smother you. They allow you to flourish. They're your biggest encourager. They, want you to soar. They don't want to hold you back. They're going to be the ones pushing you. They're going to be the ones providing correction. One of my mentors said, when you get married, you have to learn how to do agape love like you do for the people in church, like you do for your spouse.
Mm.
Like you got agape love for people at church, but do you have it for the one that you have to look at every single day when you don't feel like it?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we have to learn to teach. Like you have to have that kind of level of love for your spouse that you would have for a stranger. That compassion, because I think I've seen it too many times in marriages where people lose the compassion for their spouse.
Mm.
And that's heartbreaking to see, because then the spouse feels as if they are alone in a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's heartbreaking. And so as I talk to some of my married friends and listening to them, understanding as best I can that it's like marriage is a journey. It's not like, it's not like a 100-yard dash. We're not Sha'Carri Richardson. We get to the finish line and all that kind of stuff. No, it's like for real. It's like the 1500 or the marathon or whatever the heck that thing is. No, it's like the steeplechase.
Yes.
You're like, wait, I'm jumping hurdles. I'm jumping in water. I got a long jump. I got to do what? And I got to do like what? Marriage is like, it's not for the faint of heart, and it's filled with so much joy. Mm-hmm. We just have to, get to that point where we appreciate and really prepare us for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We just got to be prepared that it's not all bad. It's all really, really good. And in between the all really, really good, there's the middle. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we have to learn to navigate through. See, now you're giving me topics like, okay, we'll think about that.
Write them down. I agree, though. It's like, I think, a lot of culture has to do with that, like our misguided ideas about what marriage is going to look like. Like, oh, it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows. But I think now I'm going to get off on a spiritual warfare rant. I think a lot of that is the enemy and like his involvement in the world and trying to confuse things, and his his one goal, right, is to kill and destroy. So how do you do that? You confuse things, you make it difficult for people to have conversations, you toss out little like, well, that's not really what they meant things. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
You influence all of that, and that's exactly what he is doing. So of course, like culture, the worldly culture is going to point us in the opposite direction of what real life, first of all, but also marriage, um, is going to look like. And then if we look at that and relate it to how marriage between a man and a woman is also supposed to represent the marriage between Christ and the body, and it's like, well, no wonder we're all hot messes and can't seem to figure it out because we have this idea of what it's supposed to look like. And that's not anywhere close to how God intended things to look and to be, because life is hard. It
Mhm.
actually promises that in the Bible.
Yeah, it does.
And so it's just kind of like, can we all just step outside of ourselves for a second and remember that we are involved in a very big spiritual battle?
Mhm.
And sometimes my brother or my sister that I'm mad at isn't the one that I should be mad at.
Right, right.
you know, they're not the ones I should be fighting with.
Mm-hmm.
That issue is not their issue. It is a ploy. And, that's what I need to think about it, or think about it that way, so that I can remove the emotions from the situation and still have agape love for whoever the person is. And, we're all human too.
Yeah, I mean, think about marriage in the Bible. Like I did a lesson the other week. We were talking about Abraham and Sarah,
Ooh.
and like it was like, yo, Abram legit not once but twice told folks this my sister. Twice,
Mm-hmm.
from the start, God was like, okay, Abram, before he changed his name, follow me. And Sarah was like, oh, okay. Are we willing to do that? It's like, where are you going? I don't know. God told me to walk this way, but where are we going? like, what? Where are we going? And then on our journey to like, I don't know where, you up here telling them I'm your sister so it can be well with me. Excuse you?
Mm-hmm.
Not once, but twice. Like, are you kidding me? You ain't learned the first time, so we had to repeat the cycle again? Like, sometimes marriage looks like following when no one knows where we're going and your spouse may be making a mistake. I mean, obviously not as drastic as Abraham doing that. That was way extreme. But it
Mm-hmm.
may look like them losing their job, having health issues.
Mm-hmm.
Even the loss of a parent or a sibling can be detrimental to someone's well-being. So marriage kind of looks like Christ loving the bride as we go through life.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's roses and it's some dead roses.
There's some obvious valleys.
Obvious.
Yeah. Some very deep, deep gullies. But then there's some really high, high mountains. So,
Right. Just celebrate the highs. Celebrate the highs.
I think whenever I think about that, I think back to Elijah. I've been going like very slowly through a study with it's Priscilla Shire's study on Elijah. Super good if you haven't done it. Totally worth it. But I've been ebbing and flowing with that one and just being like, okay, I'm gonna like dive in deep to this chapter on Elijah and spend a lot of time on it. And then weeks will go by and I'm like, oh yeah, I should probably get back to that. But anyway, his story is like the craziest thing, right? Whenever I thought of Elijah before doing this study, I automatically thought of Mount Carmel. Not
Right.
everything else leading up to Mount Carmel. It was the big mountain moment, right? That a lot of people know of Elijah. And then going through the study with her, I love Priscilla Shire, side note,
Yeah.
she's amazing. But going through the study with her, and she's literally walking us step by step through Elijah's story to get to that Mount Carmel moment. And I'm over here going, oh.
That that's why.
This makes so much sense now.
Right? Right. It's like, oh, now I get it. Now I get it.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, okay, I see you, God. I see you. And then it's like you have to sometimes we get stuck in that valley, right? Or by the river where a crow is feeding us just bread, okay? And we have a little bit of water and we think that's it, that we're stuck there. But really, God just has us there for that time.
Just a moment. It's just a moment. Just a moment in time. One
Yep.
moment in time, like that song says, just one moment in time.
Mm-hmm. And then eventually, however long that moment is, he's going to bring you out to your Mount Carmel moment. And he's going to get the glory through it all. So why we worrying over here with our little creek and our little crow bread and not focusing on the fact that eventually it will all come to this point of, God going, okay, here's your moment now, you know,
Yeah.
and this is why we had to do all that work when you were being
Yeah.
stubborn over there.
Right. It was all for this. Are you okay now?
Mhm. See what I said. I promised you it was all gonna work out.
Yeah, are you okay now? Yes, God, I'm so sorry. I forgot,
Yep. Please forgive me for my stubbornness.
Yeah, I'm just sorry. I wasn't yielding quite as fast as I should have.
Hmm.
But it is. We just have to get to that point. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's harder depending on whatever the circumstances are. But I think when we're steadfast and pour out our heart to Him, He knows our feelings and our weakness. And He's like, I know this feels really hard and
Hmm.
we can do this together.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amen. It's just I'm a very stubborn individual, so the amount of times where I'll get to that moment and I'll just be like, "Dang, Tiffany, if you could just for like a second, but also it's like, okay, you probably needed a little bit more time in that area. Um, to get to the point where when you're in those moments of glory and things are working out, that you can actually appreciate it instead of just being like, I did that, you know?
That was me. Oh, okay.
That was all me. Just kidding, because then once you're gone through all that and you can look back and you go, okay, God, I see exactly what you did and I appreciate it. And thank you for carrying me through all of that
Mm,
so that you get the glory because I couldn't do any of this on my own.
right. None of it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like we'll be crushed under the weight of just thinking about it, much less pulling it off.
Exactly. And see, that goes back to my point about finite brains earlier that I was trying to make, and then it went on another ramble. But we have these little itty bitty brains and we serve a very big God. And so to think that we have any ability to really go, okay, this is how God's going to do this, and this is like mind blowing to me because, again, it's an ebb and flow situation and God is outside of time. And, we only have this little window, right, of things that we're looking at. We don't get to see the big, huge masterpiece. So we don't have the, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, thought just plooped out of my head. The, I guess, ability to understand that vastness. There we go. So it's just kind of like, why even try? Why not just be like, okay, cool. Again, with leadership, like this points back to the leadership thing too.
Mhm.
As like being a submissive wife, right, and following the leadership of your husband and hoping and praying that he's following the leadership of Christ,
Right.
and walking that out and being like, okay, cool, we're going to get there.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. Don't worry about it. We're We're going to get there. And you said an important thing is like praying,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I think my married people, those who are married for real, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in Christ for real, they pray more for their spouse, I think, than maybe for their children,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what it takes to ensure that God's will is done not only in you personally, but in your marriage, because it's supposed to represent the marriage that God has to the bride. So, like, it takes a lot of prayer, a lot of intercession, a lot of prayer. Like, Lord, you know, I am so not perfect. So, could you
Mm-hmm.
fix me? Because I don't know who it is, but I'm going to go with this me. So, right. And then just really interceding for them to lead,
Mm-hmm.
because leading is hard,
Yes.
especially now. I think, like, when my mom got married, I think it was different. So leading probably looks different, and it's harder now in some aspects for godly men to lead because of, like you said, all the other stuff that the enemy is placing out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. So I think it's harder and it looks different, which is
Mm-hmm.
why it takes a lot of prayer,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of like turning your plate down and saying, okay, God,
Mm-hmm.
help me, because he leads and I follow, but we're really following you, and if they're a true leader, there are times when they'll let you lead in some aspects. So how do we do this? You have to pray. You you
Mm-hmm.
just you just have to pray, because that's all we got.
Mm-hmm.
It's God and
Literally.
prayer.
Yeah.
That's it. So we got. Hang on.
Yeah. Literally. I think too, like I just had another thought about that. The other aspect of it though is leading. I mean, leading, praying, but also taking action. Right. Like this kind of goes back to the beginning of our conversation. Um,
Mhm.
but like taking action as a couple, you know, and you mentioned earlier that you have married friends that will schedule intimate time. Okay, why not schedule prayer time for each other too? You
Right.
know,
That's good. Yeah.
and like we have to be intentional and we have to be willing to put on that armor every day and know that we are fighting this battle together.
Every day, like, we are in this together.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole thing like ride or die. And I'm always like, why are we dying? Can we just ride and live? Like, why we dying? I mean, I get it. Like, I'm dying to my flesh, but why we dying? Can we just ride and live?
Yeah.
We just ride and live. Can we ebb and flow? But you just have to, put that effort into it. Like, this is it. We are doing this, as they say, till the wheels fall off, till one of us goes to glory,
Mm-hmm.
and put in the effort in to what God says, so that we can be the example for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Oh my gosh, it was already almost an hour.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Wow. That went fast. I just like looked down and was like, oh my goodness, that says 153. That's crazy. Okay, so I will just ask if there's anything else you want to kind of throw out there to sum up what we've already talked about, or if you had any other thoughts like related to dating or anything like that.
I would say to dating, even for myself, it's like, don't ever give up, because we just never know, because God is a God of the impossible and possible. And live. Don't not live. Don't not live. Live your life to the fullest extent, right? Because no one wants to be with someone who doesn't want to do anything. Like, live your life. Be a whole and complete person in Christ and live your best life.
Mm.
Like, no holds bar. If you want to go on a trip, go on a trip. If you want to go for a drive, go for a drive. I mean, obviously, we all need to be safe. God sent them out 2 by 2. But don't not do. Live your life and let God's expression live out of you.
Mm.
Because as we live our lives and let God's expression live out of us, we are changing so many people's lives that we may not even know.
Mm-hmm.
So let God's expression live out loud in you.
Mm. Amen. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Yeah, I just really appreciate your time. That was great
Yeah.
conversation. And yeah, thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you. It was great getting to know you, getting to talk to you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the stories and the perspectives that were shared in this episode. Please share it with a friend whose dating life might need some help. Wink, wink. If you want to connect with me on social media, you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at An Epiphany with Tiff. I really hope to see you there. There are multiple ways that you can support my show. You can pray for me, rate, review, and share any episode that you love. Or you can even financially contribute by going to patreon.com/An Epiphany with Tiffany. Until next time, I'm Tiffany, and I hope you just had an epiphany.